Good evening, everyone. We are here on April 12th, 2023 for our April Community Safety Wellness Task Force meeting. We want to welcome everyone who is viewing us live, as well as those who will come back and check us out at a later date. This is a very full agenda. We have a lot that we'd like to get done, so we'll move forward with their values.
Yes, thanks, Xavier. The value, I think I've said this before, but boy, it is us, it is we, and it is belonging. We're interdependent, and everything that we're going to discuss tonight, it seems, is about listening to one another and caring for one another and really living into the heart of our belonging, of our boundless belonging. Does that sound good to everyone? Can we agree that that will hold us the center of our time together? Beautiful. Thank you. Good to be with you. And I'll go straight to announcements, right, Xavier? Sound good? Okay, great. Just want to confirm that we have extended the task force to October 25th. So we have some time to create a wonderful final report, and finish up all those things that are so important that we do. Also want to just announce that we have the possibility of 2 summer interns from Duke Public Policy Institute. And so that's exciting, and we can talk together about how best to use their talents and knowledge. Also, just wanted to make sure everybody has registered to see the documentary on HEART, Holistic Empathic Assistance Response Teams. Could there be anything more beautiful than that? And that is next Thursday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the Carolina Theater. Also, there is a excellent interdisciplinary discussion on solitary confinement entitled State-Sponsored Torture. Solitary confinement is used for control for incarcerated people in our jails and prison. And that is April 21st. That would be next Friday.
Is it just me?
No, she's froze. She did
Okay.
freeze. And I don't have the information she was sharing.
I can chime in briefly as a quick
Sure.
point of correction. She said Thursday and it's Wednesday. So it's Wednesday the 19th when the documentary is being screened at Carolina Theater. Also on Monday the 17th, HEART is hosting an open house. This was originally scheduled for the first day of spring, March 20th, and was rescheduled for Monday, April 17th. So hopefully you can make one of the opportunities to connect with our HEART folks.
The Duke panel is Friday at the Duke Divinity School, Friday the 21st, 6 to about 7:30.
Boom, teamwork.
It's got
Thank you
participants
so
from
much.
Duke Divinity, Duke Law, a couple other, and including people who've at least 2 of the panelists who've experienced solitary confinement. They'll be talking about it across the nation and across the state, and to the extent that multiple sources confirm it's actually being used in the Durham County Jail, whatever name it goes by.
Councilmember Caballero is asking if there's a flyer for that event.
I believe
Yes.
Yeah, I think I sent out the flyer as a reply to the agenda, which I believe you're on that email, Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you.
All right. I'm sure Marsha's trying to make her way back in, but we'll move right on with, here she is. We'll move, are there any other announcements that we haven't covered?
I filled in for you, Marcia, about the
Thanks.
solitary panel, so they got the deets.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'll just add it. Rose sent this email, and in addition to the event on state-sponsored torture and solitary confinement on Friday the 21st, there is a community conversations panel series led by Durham Youth. This is being supported by our school board liaison, Trustee Lewis. These conversations will be student-led, and it's Tuesday, April 25th from 6 to 8 at St. Joseph's AME Church, located at 2521 Fayetteville Street. So get in where you fit in. There's plenty to do. Nobody's bored.
There's definitely plenty that needs to be done. And people are stepping up. People are really stepping up in this community. If there are no other announcements, before we move on, Rose, I know that some presenters may need access to sharing privileges. Who would that be? For the SRO, Jesse would need sharing privileges. And what about for the community-led civic hackathon? No, none necessary. So because it's a recommendation, we do like to share on the screen what's there. So
I'm happy to share if that's helpful. I'll have it up for myself personally.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to our next agenda item, the second reading of the DPS student staff retreat recommendation, SR Roundtable.
I'm doing my best to hold it down. I just got a text from Nori, who's unable to make it, and sends his best to everyone. So Jesse Huddleston here. I'll share my screen as we review this updated document. Can y'all see this?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, thank you. So yeah, I think there's not too much that's different than what we shared before. For context, this is a program recommendation for creating, or I shouldn't say creating, for scaling an existing program around creating and providing wellness retreats, mental health retreats for DPS students and DPS staff. Pupusas for Education, in partnership with DPS Foundation, has been coordinating these retreats specifically for Neal and Southern stakeholders. I've been able to participate in the retreat that they held for middle schoolers, as well as at Neal, and then another retreat, a series that they held for staff at Neal Middle. And it seems like it's providing a series of corrective experiences that really help people talk about what they're experiencing, get out of their heads, get in their bodies, connect meaningfully with one another. And again, yeah, these are healing corrective experiences that have, I think, changed some of the energy and tone for the work that they're doing, and really is relying on community capacity to get the work done, as opposed to putting more burden on our staff to deliver. So this is a part of the whole schools approach, which we've talked about. I mentioned previously conversation that we were able to have with Trustee Lewis with the school board. Thankfully, I was also able to connect with our county liaison, Commissioner Burns. And so neither of them have serious reservations about this program recommendation. They see the value in it and offered a lot of just thoughtful guidance and insight in terms of what's happening, just, you know, from their point of view. And moving forward, we would intend to pursue additional conversations with other members of the school board and the county board of commissioners, particularly the chairs. Worth noting, and then I'll check in for questions, the estimated full cost is a little bit higher than what we had reported before. The adult mental health retreats are what has gone up to account for providing childcare for adults who need it. So that's included now in the budget. That's reflected lower in the document. So you should have seen the program overview for the youth version and the adult version, as well as the budgets accordingly. I can share more, but also happy just to hold space, take questions, offer clarity as needed. Mike, I see your hand.
Jesse, sorry, we may have talked about this in the first reading, but is the total budget, are you anticipating this would be, I'm going to be confident and say not if, but when the task force approves this, that this would be task force funds we would spend on this, or are you wanting to then take this to the school board to support and fund?
So my understanding is that the funds that we have access to are city funds.
Right, that's what I
and
thought.
given
So.
that, right. And so given this is really focused on the constituents within the public school system, and that aligns with the county, the ask, if and when we approve it as a task force, would be to go to the county and school board and explore funding through those two municipal bodies.
And obviously this needs to occur during the school year, and with the clock fast ticking on this year, is this something you would ideally like to try to launch in the next school year?
Correct. That's named here.
Yeah, I
The
think your
expected project timeline would be for the upcoming school year 23 to 24.
So I might, depending on everyone else's preference and what guidance you might seek in your continued conversations with Commissioner Burns and Chair Lewis and others, is that when we approve this from the task force, that perhaps we don't just wait and make it part of our final report that isn't going to go across their transom until October, but we might try to get this in front of them sooner so that it can be part of their budgetary planning for the coming school year. Because if they didn't even see it until next October as part of an overarching final report, it would take even longer for them to act upon it.
Correct. Yeah. My hope would be, under guidance of our co-chairs, to explore having some of those intentional conversations with our electeds in those two bodies, and just figuring out the best way to move that forward, whether that's a working session or, an open general body meeting type thing.
But not sooner than October, sooner than when our final report will be done.
Again, we got 6 months, so an extra 6 months at that. So I'm not waiting, and I don't think others on the round table would want to wait. I think once we have a response from this body, the next steps would happen as promptly as possible. That's the posture I'm taking. I don't know why we would do anything differently. Other questions, comments, concerns, interests? I'll name just for the record. Please feel free to interject if there is feedback. I really appreciated the consultations we were able to have, and I want to offer thanks on the record for everyone that met with us. They're listed here, but in case someone can't see, Alexandra Bayou, Brittany Clark, Donovan Livingston, Jess Busquette, Kelly Sullivan, Kerwin Pittman, Laurie Williamson, Laura Khalil, Megan Gonzalez-Smith, Muriel Smith, and Toya Williams all offered a lot of wonderful insight. I really was grateful for the conversation, and thankfully everyone again was supportive and had no major reservations. I think two things that I'll name that came up that were helpful for reflecting. One was just thinking about systems level impact and what does it look like to really change the overall culture recognizing that if these 6 retreats are funded, that's for at max 120 people or so, for an entity that serves thousands. And so there was some just wondering and imagination around what does it look like to make this kind of program or resource available to the rest of the population. And so recognizing that this is scaling upwards from a pilot and wanting it to be more accessible, not just to folks at Neal and Southern, and holding space for even like the recent incidents that have happened where, Hillside has done their state of urgency, or there have been a number of weapons removed from schools and SROs are being activated. What would it look like for students and staff impacted by those incidents to have access to a resource like this? What would it look like for a principal to be able to activate this kind of resource for their constituents that they care for? So it will hopefully be one tool of many that our electeds and school board leaders and staff, administrators can provide so that folks have more support and more care in responding to what's happening. Again, we recognize there was a lot of war language that was being used, so that folks just needed more healing, more support, and more imagination for school spaces that didn't necessarily rely so heavily on law enforcement and policing. The other was just around ACEs. Interestingly enough, that was an evaluation, a tool that was being offered, and we got guidance from multiple folks we consulted with, including Dr. Wanda, who's on our task force, sharing just other alternate screening options just to prevent unintended negative consequences or risks that can come with using that screening tool without a clinician being present, without being able to provide additional resources that a therapist or clinician would be able to activate if needed. And so that's an ongoing conversation, one where we're hopeful advisory committee members with the Whole Schools movement and campaign would be able to check in more regularly on this program, as well as the other programs associated with the Whole Schools approach. So it's on their radar. And again, I think that's just the value of making a recommendation for scaling something that already exists and just making sure that it's supported, because we already know that there are people in our community that are working diligently and thoughtfully to coordinate and execute this. This isn't just a random idea or a plan that's sitting in someone's inbox. It's an active and alive effort. So we're hopeful to see it scaled and hopeful to see it impact positively more folks. So just wanted to mention those two things. Dr. Wanda.
Hey,
Hi.
would you go over the funding again for this, how it's separated from the Board of Education and the city and the county? I know that no one has unlimited funding, but I do know that the Board of Education, I believe, I'm not sure, has received, lots of funding. So can you just go over that one more time so I hear how that works?
Sure. So I think this will connect with something that was previously stated around funds that we have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the funds that have been provided for our work are held in the city.
Mm-hmm.
This program is something that we would like to see the county and or school board fund, given who it serves and where it sits in the municipal systems that exist for us. The school board, the public school system is countywide. The county funds the school system in a lot of ways, subsidizing what the General Assembly provides from the state level. And so I think, again, that's why more conversation will be warranted with both bodies after we're able to come to a decision about our support for this program. So my hope would be seeing one or both of those bodies offer some amount of funding. Bearing in mind, like you mentioned, I know the school board has received a funding, from ARPA stuff and Mackenzie Scott, but I don't know exactly, the terms and conditions associated with all of those funds. And so wanting to trust the leadership of administrators and electeds in their understanding of line items and all that kind of thing, all those kinds of things, I think warrants the additional conversations. So my gut tells me, if it was one or the other, it'd probably be the county, since the school sits under the county. But again, that's literally above my pay grade. So I'm hopeful that in the future conversations that we can have, hopefully with Bettina and other members on the school board and Brenda and other members on the county commission, we can have better clarity around what feels best, all things considered, just remaining strategic and creative. So that's the approach that I'd like to see us take as it relates to making a request for the additional funding and why we're not going to the city.
Thank you. I just wanted to hear it one more time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll stop sharing my screen and hold space for a motion if someone has one.
Before that is, I do want to point out, as indicated in the document under the conflict of interest area, the Whole Schools initiative is a partnership between Durham Public Schools, Durham Public Schools Foundation. So as a Durham Public Schools Foundation employee, I have recused myself from this discussion. I've just been sitting quietly, and I will also recuse myself from voting. So Marsha or a Marsha appointee will need to carry through the vote, because I'm on the sideline.
All right.
And for 2/3 in this, we have without my vote, there are 11 task force members, so you would need 7 in order to approve this by 2/3.
Hey, would somebody like to make a motion that we,
I would move to approve.
okay, great. All right, let's, second?
I second.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm just gonna go around this and just nay, yes or no. Wanda,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
great. Mike,
Yes.
Samuel,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Alex, Isaac, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Cerise, Shanice, sorry, having trouble talking.
Yes, yes,
Muffin,
Yes.
Toya,
yes,
beautiful, and Alejandra.
yes.
And I vote yes as well. That is a unanimous approval. Very good. Thank you all.
Thanks, y'all. Looking forward to next steps. Appreciate everyone's support.
Great. Xavier?
Yes, back on you with the Violence Prevention Roundtable.
Okay, great. We have a guest, Karen Halderman, former co-chair of the Racial Equity Task Force, DPS parent, gun violence prevention advocate for years and years, and just a great citizen and resident of Durham. And this is a proposal. It's a civic hackathon to prevent gun violence. It is coming submitted by Karen with the assistance and support and nurture of Dr. Boone, and also with the support of formerly the VIDE Roundtable, and now we are the Violence Prevention Roundtable. And so it does come with the support of Samuel, myself, and Dr. Boone. And I will, so this is the first reading and it is time sensitive. And so if we agree with it, and Javonia Lewis is with us from the school board, which is marvelous and has also been a contributor to this, and so glad that you're with us. And so I'm going to turn it over to Karen, if you'd like to present, and to Dr. Boone presenting this proposal.
Thank you, Marcia. It's really wonderful to be with you all. I hope maybe someday we have a group of ex-task force members, like the ex-presidents, or that we can all hang out and see each other in person. It's so good to see some friends I know well, some friends I've only known in name only, but it's great to be here and to meet you all. As Marcia said, my name is Karen Haldeman, and truthfully, I come to this issue of gun violence as a mother. And I want to take a moment now to remember and honor the children who have been stolen from our families, and the trauma that our students and our families continue to endure. So if we could just take one moment to remember and honor them. So as Marcia said, I've been in this space for a really long time, actively in Durham for the last 12 or 14 years now. And prior to that, I've worked in violence prevention in cities like Oakland, California, specifically with mothers of victims. And so I find myself in this space for a very long period of time and feel very passionate about it and devoted to it. And when I see that we are suffering even more violence, and violence at the hands of, at the tool of a firearm, I have to ask myself, what can we do differently? What can we do differently? And now, having seen generations of students now walking out, organizing, crying out for help. If you saw a strict state of urgency, if you've spoken to students, I have students in my home. They are in crisis and need our help, and it's our job to protect them. It's our job. And so, having been through through a lot of different organizations, dealing with policy, sometimes with direct community violence prevention in different circles around Durham, talking about this issue, I really wanted to figure out, how do we innovate on this? How do we stop trying to put a square peg into a round hole and continue to get the same, we get the same result or a worse result, right? We've had an increase in homicide deaths. And among our young people, the last few weeks, I know that you all know this, have been absolutely catastrophic and unacceptable. Unacceptable. So I've been thinking over the last several months, how do we do something differently? And the idea of a hackathon emerged from my own interaction with Code for Durham, which is, we have our own coding group, a civic coding group in Durham that helps solve kind of provides tech solutions to certain civic problems, building an app or developing a website or things of that nature. So I started kind of digging into what a hackathon actually was. And I thought, wow, we could do this for a social issue. We could do this we could try to hack or solve gun violence together. And we can do that together in a collaborative space with energy, enthusiasm, And honestly, in this space, most of all, hope. This is very, very easy these days to feel hopeless and helpless. And that's the enemy of getting the work done. We have got to bring hope into the conversation. And that's been hard. I'm gonna be honest, that's been really, really hard. I don't know if you all feel that way. If you feel weary, I feel that. I feel that. So I began conversations over the last several months with, first it began with Mayor O'Neill, who was really grieving with parents on NC Central's campus. We had conversations about how do we do something different. Speaking with the Duke Vice President for Community Engagement Affairs over at Duke, and talking to her, Community Health rather, Ms. Deborah Jones, and really seeing what could we do that's kind of different and innovative. And once you start talking about things, people connect you all, to other resources and other people. And so I spoke to Board of Education Director Javanya Lewis. I spoke to Namashina Burns and Commissioner Burns, and also to Councilwoman Freeman. And I've sort of been trying to figure out how can we all come together. What I've learned over the last 12 years or so in Durham is that we have over 1,000 people working on this issue. People who are survivors, or people who are faith leaders, people who are in the schools, people who are just out in the community. I see Muffin Hudson here. I've heard of you so often. I've never met you in person. I hope to be able to do that. People out there doing the work. I know that you all here are out doing the work. But we very rarely, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And we're not really good at talking to each other and connecting and keeping those connections strong, and really figuring out how can we approach this? How can we tackle this together? So the idea is to, and this certainly comes from recent tragedies. As a DPS parent, and I'm a PTSA member at Jordan High School. I have a student at Jordan High School. I have a graduate from Jordan High School. And we have, students who are reaching out and saying, like, we need some help processing this. And I was gratefully connected with Dr. Boone through the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People when I attended a recent meeting to discuss this proposal. And she has been really, really instrumental in helping to bring young people into this conversation. So originally the thought was, let's have a community hackathon that spans the city, but we're really talking about a youth-centered community hackathon to specifically address violence prevention, gun violence prevention, and care for survivors. And that's the purpose and the goal of this hackathon, is to emerge from a one-day long event from 9 in the morning till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're still kind of hammering out all the details. And I'm glad to answer any details you have about the structure, what this looks like. If any of you all have been to a hackathon, might be interesting to hear what your perspective is. I am a trained social scientist. I understand the value too of these conversations that are deeper, that aren't kind of surface conversations trying to kind of check a box or feel as though, okay, we've done that, now we're going to move on. This is deep work. And this would be in my goal would be to have these hackathons continue quarterly, or maybe even more than that. We'll talk to the young people who are helping to organize, have them more often so we can stay connected, we can stay focused, we can hold one another accountable, and we can sort of send out some report cards on how we think things are going. So I always think report cards are a nice way to kind of flip the script on the teachers. So you've got some helpers in the community. Sometimes they need to get a report card as to whether or not they're carrying out what the students are asking. So that's sort of my pitch here. The idea of a hackathon in general is to be in an inclusive space together. So we're talking about young people from high school age specifically. I think we don't really, this is going to be a small pilot. We would love to expand this going forward. We know that our middle schoolers are active, but we're limiting this to high school for right now. Specifically, and we know that there have been tragedies at middle schools as well. So we're not saying that that's not a population that we need to address. But this specifically would be for high school students. And it would be a full day of essentially roundtable discussions with people in the community. So bringing together students and the people whom they see as important to getting their goals met, having their goals met. Who do they want to see at a hackathon? Who do they want to be sitting next to or across from? Who do they want to share ideas with? Who do they think is in charge of potentially executing their plan, what they want to do, what they want to see happen? So we're kind of working on the invitation list right now. Let's see. And so again, the idea is to bring people together to collaborate, and not just collaborate, but collaborate in an energized space that encourages innovation. And we talk so much about Durham as the city of innovation. Our students are so innovative. There are so many talents that we are just simply not recognizing. And so this gives our young people to really innovate according to how their experience has been, what their thoughts are on how to hack gun violence and how to care for survivors in doing that. So if we want to, I don't know if y'all have more questions up front about me personally or thoughts on that, I'm more than happy to go through the proposal. I'm going to call it out right away that there's a salary request or a compensation request for me. I will work within any budget. And the most important thing to me is that we compensate our students for all of their work and that we're able to feed people. Those are two really big pieces of this as well. So I'm glad to answer any questions going forward. And thank you. And thank you for having me here. Thank you for entertaining this proposal. It means a great deal.
Thank you, Karen. Wanda, we had a wonderful discussion about this and talked about how this, the wisdom and information and guidance that we would receive from this hackathon, hearing from the students would also be able to uplift and help with the ethnodrama that we also supported and passed as a resolution recommendation. I was just wondering if you had anything to share.
Yeah, thank you. I will say that the two are not technically connected. So let me make that distinction. They do support one another in a way, but this is separate from the ethnodrama. At this point, we've engaged several community members and young people, parents that are from not only Hillside, but other schools across Durham. And they are a part of a process of giving us information. Samuel is one of those young people. Thank you, Samuel.
Hi, Samuel.
To identify, their voices, and we've done this, before. So these young people are used to giving their opinions and their unique expertise. And not all of the young people that are engaged are as gifted and genius as Samuel is, but they are from all walks of life. And regardless of how we all feel in terms of the horrors of even one youth death or even a death at all, we have to recognize that across the spectrum, we're all hurting, parents are hurting, and youth are hurting. And so, again, this is a youth-centered event with individuals at tables that speak to different aspects of the gun violence issue or challenge. And the facilitators at the tables would be young people who will collect, identify, listen to, and glean the information from all those present. It is going to be an eclectic kind of atmosphere with a DJ and music and celebration of life and living and future living. And so that was one of the important things that came out initially in these conversations. And so we wanted to look, hear, and feel like a youth event. Hackathon is a weird word. And hacking is not something that's mentioned in a positive light. So, we have to kind of put our hat around the other way in order to get to that. But that's basically what it is. How I do think that this has the potential for integrating with the ethnodrama is that PSAs can come out of this. And the conversations that individuals have in this space can be recorded and come out of that in terms of something like an ethnodrama or these PSAs that we've talked about. But yeah, so that's what I have to say about it. And so questions? Thoughts, questions?
Mike, I see your hand is raised. Yeah.
So it's a pretty ambitious and expedited timeline because you're wanting to accomplish this before the end of the school year, and perhaps even earlier if you're wanting this to occur before your planned follow-up meeting with Chair Lewis on, I think you have the April 21st, at least as a tentative date. So, I mean, it's challenging. Sounds like you're lining up youth participants with that appropriate focus, but are you, Karen, when I was hearing you, it sounded like you also wanted relevant stakeholders who your youth participants would decide need to be in the room, and I would stress to listen, not to talk at the youth, but to listen to them, and stakeholders who could be, frankly, have their feet held close-ish to the fire to, yeah, we have heard you, we have heard these ideas generated, and we pledge to go to our respective bodies, and not, obviously not just a school board, but, city council, county commission, sheriff's office, DPD, et cetera, et cetera. So you think you will be able to, but then, Wanda is also appropriately talking about it needs to be youth focused and they need to be held center stage and generate ideas that can then be reported out later after this. And they're not mutually exclusive, but do you want the adults, in the room listening? And if so, do you think you'll be able to get those relevant folk or representatives of those relevant bodies in the room with you, by the end of the month or before the end of the month?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Mike. And the timeline has changed since this has kind of been spinning around for a long time. But we have secured a venue thanks to Board Director Lewis being able to secure the Staff Development Center on May 6th. So that's the date we're looking at now. And we've kind of put that sort of on the map. I do believe we can get people to the table. It's going to be, again, a smallish pilot. We wish we could invite everybody who's working on this issue in Durham. I swear it's got to be 1,000 people at least. And people may feel like, well, why weren't we included? This is really going to have to be a very focused group, maybe 20 to 25 students and 20 to 25 community partners. Those people will be identified by the young people themselves. Who do they want to see? Who do they see as helping? Who are the helpers in the community from the youth perspective? I think
you'll obviously have accomplished that before this event occurs, because obviously they need to be invited. Got it.
Absolutely. So we are moving quickly, but we're really optimistic that we'll have people, especially because people are very engaged in a different way on this issue. We know that we are all mourning, but it seems most recently we've seen kind of a swell of activity around this issue, right? So Board Director Lewis, for example, is having her listening session on the 25th of April. I think that could be a really great way to just start building momentum. We've seen DCIA is holding conversations. Durham Can is holding conversations. I know Immaculate Conception is doing a Spanish speaking conversation around this issue. So there's a lot of community effort that I think is giving people that sort of signal that it's time to get involved. So I'm very optimistic, but yes, we still need to create that list, and then we still need to invite people. You're right, Mike. Yeah.
And the funding, you all are anticipating, I assume, that the task force would fund that this wouldn't be an ask you'd make of the school board. This would be task force funding that would fund this initial.
Yes, that's the hope.
Got it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I would just also add that we've interviewed several young people already, and they've provided names of who they would like to see. And some of those individuals are already interested. So I have no question that those that have been asked to be involved are looking forward to do so. We have a couple of questions from Jesse and Xavier. Xavier, I think, was first. I'm not sure. Xavier?
Yeah, I appreciate the flexibility that the group that's worked on this has given us with the date. But even with the May 6th date, you know, I had to put on the agenda first reading, but I'm hoping that with as Karen mentioned, the momentum and meeting the moment, that we could actually do a vote to waive the second reading, as we've done in other cases. So that if we go that route, that would clear the group that's working on this to start moving right away and take advantage of the time we have left. So just putting it out there to the task force is totally up to you as a task force, up to us as a task force. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the timeline and how we could help make that happen within the timeline that's suggested.
Thank you, Xavier.
And then Jesse?
Jesse.
I have a couple of things. One, I wanted to make sure I was understanding this, and it connects to a second point/question I have. Samuel, you put in the chat that you were wanting to highlight student leaders at Durham School of Technology, along with many others across DPS, have voiced their frustration with gun violence, and specifically want our city to emphasize creating more mental health resources for students and improving access to already existing services. It wasn't clear to me if that was in reference to the program recommendation that we just voted on or this one.
That was in reference to the one we just voted on.
Okay, boom. It was kind of like both in some ways. But along with those lines, I'm curious, I know the Youth Roundtable didn't put forth this recommendation, but I'm just curious to hear from you all if there's any particular alignment that you all could speak to. I'm curious in particular to note, and I appreciate your transparency, Karen, around the budget request, and a significant portion goes to fund you. And I'm not against compensating people for their time. I always just want to be transparent and make sure that the folks that are most impacted feel that that's a decision worth making. So I'm not a young person. This is supposed to be for young people. So I'm just holding space and curious if there's particular alignment there with what y'all have been doing is or not, but just curious. And then I have one other thing as a point of correction, but it's very small.
So I'm not sure I'm completely understanding the question, but
Sorry, I do that sometimes. Let me be more clear, because I said a lot. I do this instead of just saying boom. What I was wondering about in this particular moment was curiosity from members of the Youth Roundtable. I was curious to hear from them and wondering if this particular request has any alignment with what you all are doing.
I'm happy to give my like initial reaction to that question, but would welcome the rest of the task force to chime in. I do not. I think that the vast majority of the time that we've been spending together has been learning about restorative practices inside schools and outside schools. And so to that, I feel like there's actually more synergy with the proposal that the proposal that you've been working on, Jesse. But folks on my task force should tighten me up if that doesn't sound accurate.
I think that sounds right. That was my initial reaction too. I mean, I think where the alignment is that we've been talking about restorative practices as a way to prevent all of the harm that we're seeing in our community. And we've really been focusing on what do restorative practices look like in our public school system here in DPS. And the fact that we say that we're doing this and we're doing this preventative work, and it's not actually happening. I feel like I'm getting the sense that the hackathon is not so much maybe it's the preventative piece, right? Depending on how the conversations go, right? And who's there at the table. So I could see that alignment, but feels more like the conversations that happen after the harm has, transpired.
That's helpful for me. I think as a quick follow-up, I'm curious if there's any thoughts, particularly around, I guess, and maybe you all can't speak to this, but this is just for our body as a whole. How are folks feeling about the budget and as it relates to the significant portion that would be going to fund Karn's work? I mean, I see the other aspects, food, DJ, sort of the programmatic elements, and you're seeking to pay the 25 young people that would participate. Thoughts, feelings? Sure, yeah.
Just interject briefly too. So this, when we, thought about this budget, it was a couple of weeks ago too. So the timeline's shorter now, right? And like I said, I'm glad to operate within any budget. So it may just be if we've got 3 weeks ahead of us at 20 hours a week. I know that we could pull something off that's good. I mean, I think that's going to be something that I think that we could do. So like I said, I'm want to be really flexible with that because at first blush you're like, what the heck is this? So I really want to be clear that the most important thing to me is that we get everybody together and that we hear directly from the people who are feeling most impacted right now. And that to me is the beauty of something like this, where you are having conversations initiated by and nurtured by young people who know what it's like to be in school, to be a young person, to be part of a community that continues to take a hit after hit after hit where gun violence is concerned, some of whom have lost their peers and their friends and their loved ones. So I just want to be clear on that, that we've got a couple of weeks now. I think we're at 3.5 weeks potentially. And we're looking for, someone is asking about selecting students for the pilot. So Dr. Boone and I have been in a couple of conversations about this, where we have students who are really interested in, there's so many students who are passionate about this issue. It seems like more and more, right? But maybe there are students who haven't been heard and some who have been directly impacted, particularly who haven't been heard or haven't felt like they've been empowered to speak. And we know that that's true of survivors in many instances. And I know Marcia can speak to that as well. So we would like to see people, young people who are deeply impacted, people who feel very passionate about the issue, but maybe haven't had a chance to speak. And so that, it looks like this, sorry, there's stuff happening in the chat. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. But I don't know, Dr. Boone, if you wanted to add anything else to that recruitment question. You're muted. Here you go.
So one of the things that we did not want to do was to include all of Hillside students because they've been the focus of everything. We're drawing on Hillside students for everything. Samuel was selected because of his input here and his facilitation skills, should we say, and his ability as a young person to navigate the whole, adults, young people, young adults. Other than that, there are individuals or young people that come from other high schools in Durham, excuse me, based on some of the names that TRI has been given for people that are involved in the Youth Coalition. Some of them are not in the Youth Coalition. So we're asking friends of friends who have been impacted. We're asking for individuals who live in vulnerable communities that go to high schools within those areas. And so, as I said, we're not cherry picking, if you will, in the way that sometimes that happens, but who has had an experience of their lives being touched by gun violence. And that shows itself in other ways, such as self-harm. So some young people may not say that they're interested because of the direct impact of gun violence, but because of the situation with gun violence, now they're having traumatic experiences such as cutting and things like that. And so that's the pool that we're drawing on. And one of the, I think, special things about this space is that there are going to be rooms set aside so that if the conversations become too difficult or someone needs to have a break from what's happening, there's a place that they can go that's quiet and somebody will be there to help them with those emotions. So.
And will those somebodies be, even if they're volunteers, will they be trained professionals who know how to provide that therapeutic care to a survivor of gun violence,
Yes.
such as is built into the prescriptions for repair program, for instance? I didn't see that detail in the proposal, but you're anticipating those people being on hand as well.
Yes.
Okay.
And Javiera, you had a question, another question. Yeah, please share.
I know she said she had to hop on another call.
Oh, okay, she's gone. Okay, all right.
I'll just finish what I was saying too then. I think that's what it was. The point that I was going to make was just I work at Duke in the Office of Durham Community Affairs with Deborah. And so her position is an interesting one. She reports to both the university and the health system side. So I know she's an associate vice president. And I think I'm hearing the request, Xavier, to, move this forward more quickly. And I would feel more comfortable if the written proposal was reflective of some of the changes that have taken place. And I'm just wondering, as a point of process, are we able to do not essentially a second reading, but be able to receive an updated document and then vote virtually or something along those lines, and then be able to provide that update transparently in our May meeting? I'm happy to be flexible and do what we can to move this forward. But personally, I don't feel comfortable voting on something that isn't clearly outlined exactly what's what. Hearing you mention too, Karen, that some of the funds would shift because now the timing is different. It would be great to know more clearly what the budget is, you know, all those details so that it's laid out. So there's no question what the intentions are and what the expectations or estimates are. That would be helpful for me. I don't know how others feel. So just wondering about the possibility for that. I'm leaning on Xavier and Marcia for guidance on how to do that.
Can I just jump in because I'm having to hop between, and so I might
Sure.
miss my opportunity to speak. I just really want to make sure that we are highlighting, and I didn't see the document, I didn't read it, that that within the recruitment of students, I really appreciate that the target's not just going to be Hillside, because as we know, there has now been guns or violence in all of our high schools at this point. And also just really targeted effort with Latino youth. That the problem that other large cities face is that eventually immigrant communities get brought into the violence of the communities that they're in. And I think that is what's happening in Durham. And I don't think it's going, that trend is very, that's a trend in so many cities across the United States. So to undo that trend here would be kind of miraculous. So that's my request for the folks, is to just do really, Student U, Emily K, like just really intense targeted research, outreach to those organizations, and within the high schools, with the teachers who have relationships in those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. To speak to Jesse's concerns, procedurally, I would not be in favor of an email vote. I think our vote should be public. Options that I see would be to list out the changes that we've talked about before we take a vote, if we were to waive a second reading. Another option would be to move it into the next meeting, our next meeting would be May 10th, which would push back the date of the event. And the third option would be to greatly reduce the budget to where it just falls within the normal budgetary ask of a roundtable. So if the budget were greatly decreased, it could just be moved forth as a roundtable event, just like we did town halls and things like that had cost. When we first talked about this, that's kind of what we saw and we thought was going to happen. But then we looked at the budget, like, no, this needs to come to the full task force as a recommendation. So it has kind of moved back and forth in different iterations. We just, personally, this has to happen. However it happens is really, it's up to us to talk about and think about. But, I appreciate all this feedback. It's very helpful. It just so happens that, if we wish there were more time, but we're in crisis. So those are the options I see: to move it to the next meeting, to try to lift changes now so that we can feel better about waiving a second reading, or greatly reduce the budget to where everyone here is comfortable with it just being a roundtable event. To me, that would mean, I'm just throwing out a figure, somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000, as opposed to where we are now.
And Xavier, another option can't be a called meeting, just for the expedited meeting, just for the purposes of voting on a revised document we could all see ahead of time, and just if you just get us on Zoom at quorum long enough, within the next week. I'm not talking in the next month. I'm talking in the time that Karin and Juana all need to respond to all our kibitzing, but then not to cut into the already crunched time, because by then presumably they could also provide more detail to Javier and others about these are the kind of students we've been able to recruit. These are the kind of public policy stakeholders who've already committed to attending, and we could all see that within a weekish, and then gather on Zoom for the long enough to vote and then adjourn.
That is definitely an option. I'm looking at a council member. What type of public notice would need to take place prior to a call.
I mean, to your point about public, those are all public records anyway. Any email that gets sent within the city, anyone can pull it. So it's not like it's not being done transparently. It's just a different mechanism. And if you wanted to do a roll call like by name in the email so that you could actually list every person and have them vote yes or no, that is a public record because it's city business. So if that's a concern, I think there's a way to mitigate that. The other way you could do it is just, has anyone captured what's been changed or what the recommendations are? I mean, we do this with land use cases. A developer or prof or something in the meeting, staff captures it and they say, yeah, that's the text commitment. And that's what gets voted on. So I also don't feel uncomfortable for y'all to just, what are the things that folks are wanting? Is everyone okay with it? Yes, it's been captured appropriately and you vote on it this evening. If folks within this group are comfortable without doing the second reading, I don't want to assume anything for y'all. I'm not a voting member. I'm just sharing what are some of the procedural things you could do that we do on council, and it's completely allowable.
So what I have for, oh, go ahead, Wanda, did you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the main things that I heard had to do with Karen's fee. And then also about a mental health specialist being in the room and available if someone is having a challenge during the meeting. So those are the two things that I heard. Is there something else that stands out?
So I have just, I think, a little more detail around recruitment and specifically Latinx outreach. So I know that we put in the budget, I think we put in the budget simultaneous translation if those services are needed, and to ensure that we do have, and you just take a look at the most recent tragedies when you want to talk about the Spanish speaking community's experiences of gun violence. So we want to be sure that we have people who have been deeply impacted. Yeah, so that's definitely a piece here. Jesse, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
So Natalia Rosales and Angie Mejia are the two Latinx individuals that will be represented.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to chime in. Thanks, Javier, for your guidance. And in the spirit of transparency, right? And also like wanting y'all to have like the space to be diligent. I know we're wanting to move forward as promptly as possible. I think I hear my father, be thorough. Like, let's call a thing, let's be thorough and like take the additional week or so, if that's what's needed, to update the proposal. And once it's ready, like send it out via email. And like, I think we can have that motion that like it's clear that we want to move this forward and that be reflected. And if we can have like a final email that notes everyone's responses so that it's clear, a kind of single source, and that's in a public record, then I would be in favor of that in place of a second reading. That like essentially that email correspondence would be the expedited second reading. So that would feel more responsible and more orderly. We don't have, you know, the city staff in place to take notes and reflect and hear back. And, you know, some people haven't even read the original proposal just because of timing. So I just think that would be a more responsible and collective approach so that we can move forward together. It seems like this is a bit different than just a standard listening session. So I appreciate that it was brought to the group. And again, I'm happy to support an expedited process, but one that is still thorough and clear so that we have a clear record of a proposal that outlines what the budget was and what the timelines were and all those kind of things that keep us accountable to each other and to community members who want us to do this right. Is that something that we can move forward with, that expectation that y'all would update materials and then we'd be responsive via email as intentionally as we can be?
If we could know what the concerns are, maybe listening back to this or something, I don't know. But so that we can, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
for me, it's concerns is a strong term. I'm not concerned. I think I just want to be diligent and have I want clarity of like what the amendments would be, given some of the clarity around who is being recruited. I think you've all named some people, the timelines, you have a location now, the date, all of that. I don't think that would take long to actually do, but given we have other items to discuss as a group, I'm not sure that it doesn't feel responsible right now to rush and make a vote and then things be unclear. So it's feasible for us to handle this within a week or two, I'm imagining. I can't imagine it more than 2 weeks. Y'all are on it. And if someone sent an updated document tomorrow, I'd be ready to vote and in support. I just want clarity so that everyone has a chance to have read it and there's no confusion about what we're all agreeing to, assuming we would be unanimously supportive.
Yeah, I don't think the changes that you're asking for are wild or concerns are anything that I think would constitute a reworking of the proposal in any really significant way. It would, I'm absolutely happy to rework it and send it out. I could even get it out tonight. And you all can take a look. I don't know what the procedure is after that, but if that works, we can do it that way, if that makes sense to y'all.
Is there anyone uncomfortable with doing the email vote for the second reading other than myself?
And as a point of additional transparency, I'd love if in the next meeting that we have, there'd be even 5 minutes just to check in, and have
Absolutely.
that kind of, so that it's clear in another public record what the decision was, how the event has gone, assuming that it will have happened by then. I think that will be another point to just hold this up, in front of everyone to see.
Yeah, I would propose that the email vote would take place a week from today. At some point, we can send out the information prior to Wednesday, and just make sure that the vote happens Wednesday.
I
Is there
agree.
anyone uncomfortable with that? If not, we do need to do a first reading. So we would need a motion to accept this, if that is your pleasure, for first reading. Alec left, so we're back down to 11 people. So again, 2/3 would be 7 persons.
Are we needing a motion for the first reading?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, no, we don't. I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. So we're good then.
Okay. I was
I'm
confused
sorry.
by that.
I
That's
had that
okay.
procedure already ready in front of me. I'm sorry.
I had to do Robert's Rules of Order earlier today, and I was like, well, we got to vote. We'll do that. Okay, so it's all good. We're in this together.
Yep. So I really want to see this done. I know that we need to do it thoroughly. And I appreciate that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Rose, we only have 10 minutes, which means we need to.
Can I make use of those 10 minutes?
Well, either that or in the next, but the timeline is so for our final report may feel like a long way off, but I don't think it is. What would you like to do? Because we also want to.
I'd love to take the 10 minutes if folks are comfortable with that, just because I don't want to. I think getting on board with this and starting the process is going to be helpful rather than pushing it off, especially just going over at least the timeline bits. And then the stuff we don't get to, I can talk with folks offline about that and give updates at the next meeting.
And if you do that, if we go that route, and I appreciate that. I hope that that we can extend a few minutes of grace after that, because this is April. We would have ended this year, a 2-year period, and that is the time frame that Dr. Campbell is with us officially. And this is his last official meeting, so I do want to spend a few minutes just thanking him as well after you finish, Rose. if the task force members could stay a few more minutes after that. that'd
We
be
got to at
great.
least have a brief Dwayne roast.
Exactly. Go ahead, Rose.
All right, so I'm doing this via Menti. The Community Safety Department was kind enough to let me use their account. So because this is a public meeting and this is a discussion more just for the task force appointees, I'm not putting the public Menti information on the screen, but if you click the link, you should be able to go to it and provide input. I'm going to kind of just go speed through things, but then I'm going to send the link out to everyone. So please provide more thoughts this evening. But first, I'm just going to share the timeline that Marcia, Xavier, and Dwayne and I discussed this week. So this is, everyone can see the screen with the timeline on the screen, yes? So what we'd be talking about doing, and I guess before I go into it, the reason that I'm talking about this, I've reached out to a lot of you, is that I agreed to kind of be the project manager of this particular venture of the task force. So to be clear, I, Roseworth, will not be writing the whole report, but I will be the kind of person who might be reaching out and nudging and trying to sort of keep everybody in order and sort of keep this process moving along. So the timeline that we're talking about is writing the report sections and doing the design of the report in June and July, towards the end of July and early August, having a group of us put all those pieces together so it's one cohesive document, and then doing a first reading of the full draft in August and a second reading of the final draft in September. And then October could be most fully dedicated to community engagement and that aspect of things. And I'll kind of get into at the very end some things that we want to sort of different roles that people can take on in this process. So I think the best way to do this is for me to just sort of go through these. I'm going to give like a minute to each one. If you have it up on your computer, we're not going to have much time to reflect on them all together. But again, I'll try and do some work between this meeting and the next meeting to kind of go through. So I sent out those sample reports. So if anyone has strong thoughts, and again, I'll kind of send this out more later so that folks can click through it, or just send me responses to the questions via email. But what elements of those sample reports did you most like or dislike? If you have a second to move that through, and I'm going to give us about 30 to 45 seconds, and then with the time crunch, move on to the next question. So just reading some of the things on the screen. So appreciate the actionable format, love the use of art, using local art would be really neat. Clear and concise recommendations on one page and then more detailed breakdowns. Cohesive introduction. Don't like the reports that were mostly descriptive, so more focused on the action and solutions. So pulling in some of the visual appealing things, but with more concrete next steps. Okay, so you should be able to continue replying on this one. And you should see an option on your screen to move to this next question. So this one, who are the top 2 groups of people that you want to read this report? And I will ask you to avoid the temptation of saying that you want everyone to read it. Try to think of, specifics. Do you want elected officials to read it? Do you want the media to read it? Local advocacy groups, organizations, community leaders, voters, the Latinx community, like what are those sort of subgroups in Durham that you're most hoping will read this? So we've got elected officials in the media, decision makers across North Carolina, local advocacy organizations, youth. So my plan is to kind of coalesce all our answers here. And this will kind of, if we keep this in top of mind, that should hopefully help shape what this final report looks like, because we would make different decisions, to to focus on different groups. So moving to the next question, what do you want those people to do after they read the report? And if you're thinking of a specific group, note that group in your response. But if you want them to take an action, what's that action that you want them to take? So connect with us, work with us, make things happen. Realign spending. Want the media to put some pressure on elected officials, find those funds. So again, some of these things, there are ways we can connect this to the structure of the document and the choices that we make that will sort of help kind of guiding principles that we can keep in mind when we write the report. Also, just real quick, I'll move through this one fast. How long do you think those people will spend reading the report? Because that will also shape what this report should look like and how we design this report. Because, you know, I'm from academia. We love to put together a 200-page document. All right, 30 to 45 minutes. Not longer than an hour. Nice. I think there are some good things here that we can come back to about that balance between people who want to read it really in depth and the people who are going to look at it super quickly. What is most important to those groups of people? What are they going to be looking for in that report? And again, if you're talking about specific people, note that group in your response. So yeah, root causes, actionable solutions. People who came to the listening sessions are going to want to hear what they said reflected in it. So keep typing your answers, but for those who have already typed, since we're short on time. So this one is a ranking. So you should be able to rank which each of these. So what content should the report spend the most time on? So we've got background on the issues in Durham, the history process of the task force, development, justification for recommendations, the recommendations themselves, or next steps for the recommendations. It's going to do your best to rank those from 1 to 5. So we can see this is kind of taking into account everyone's rankings so far. Which I think there are some clear things rising to the top here. The kind of recommendations, the next steps, and the other things being there, but a little bit less emphasized. So we'll get everyone else's input on this and then come back to this at the next meeting. And then this one is just to sort of check all that apply. There are a bunch of different things that are sort of just options for things that we could include in the report. So if you like the idea of putting that in the report, check it off. I will say, if you check it off, that means that someone on this task force is going to have to help put it together. So keep that in mind as well. And sort of change entity, that's the language I took from one of the other reports. That would be like, here are the Board of Education recommendations. Here are the, those types of things. Okay, and I am 2 minutes over, but I think I want to give everyone a chance because I think this one goes away as soon as I move to the next slide. All right, I'm going to move on, but again, I'll send all of this out. So the last thing I'll say is that there are other things to be decided. What are the outlines for the individual report sections going to look like? What's the outline for the upfront stuff going to look like? I'm going to try and take everything that we said here and hopefully solicit input from the folks who weren't able to be here or give y'all a little bit more time to think on these questions. And I'm also going to ask y'all to answer via email, so not right now, what role you want to play in the final report process, and then to think through how much time you're actually going to have in your schedule with the vacations or work things or other obligations that you're going to have going on. So my plan is to talk with all of you between now and May to put together those things. And then in May, have a more concrete discussion around a specific outline for the report and a kind of game plan for who's going to work on what stuff when. So that was a lot faster than I wanted to go through this. So thank y'all for sort of speed lightning going through that Menti with me. And I'll stop sharing. And just say that, so look for an email from me later tonight with all of those questions if you want to add in more information. And then by the end of the week, sort of think through those questions I put at the end. Again, I'll put that all in my email. And if you have any like concerns about this process or anything or things that you want to see, please reach out to me. I'm going to sort of do my best to make sure that this report reflects all of the hard work that y'all are doing, but also keeps in mind that you're all volunteers and your capacity and sort of tries to balance those as best as I can. So thank you for all of that.
Well, thank you for all of that. Thanks for leading us through that so quickly. Very, very, very helpful. Very helpful. I'm looking forward to this report. I know it's going to be great. We're going to move on now to our last item, which is part of our closing. Before I turn over to Marsha, Isaac mentioned that he had to leave, but he wants to express his gratitude and appreciation to Dwayne. I'm reading from the chat here. Much gratitude for you, Dwayne. You've been such a gift to us. Blessings to you going forward. Marsha, please facilitate.
Yes, I just want to thank, it's been such an amazing time to have your service, Dr. Dwayne Campbell. And I just want to take a minute to just express my gratitude and best wishes and to give people opportunity. If y'all would like to put something on the chat, we'll capture it and send it to Dwayne. But I just want to thank you, especially for the balance, that you are such a beautifully balanced human being, that you have this open heart and this brilliant mind, that you're so lighthearted and enjoy humor, but also you're such a serious defender of the most vulnerable people in our community. What a beautiful balance. I just also want to just thank you for your imagination and your curiosity. And still you respect our institutional requirements and have the patience to do all those things that just flipped me out. I just could not understand. You have just been full of mercy for me and all that I do not know and how to do. And it's just been such a joy to be your friend and your colleague. And I'm just so excited for you and what you're going towards, but also know that you have just been a great gift to this task force and to Durham, and there's no escaping our love. And may I, would someone, Xavier, would you like to say a few words?
You stole my thunder. You used the word beautiful balance. I had written down passionate professional, but everything I was going to say, you said it. To
I love
walk
it.
in a space where, you can't, you have to be impartial, but it's hard to be impartial with the work we're doing. I mean, it's hard not to bring your heart into it. You've done such a wonderful job of keeping that balance, as Marsha said. We spent a lot of time together. You've kept us, you kept us in one piece, because sometimes it's been rough. And you were like a salve for us. So thank you so much for all of that. There are some who are putting in the chat, but others, anybody else want to speak out before we read what's in the chat?
Yeah, so I want to say, Dwayne, I think that you are absolutely phenomenal in everything that you brought to the table. But personally, what you brought to me was that beautiful baby boy. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm so far removed from little babyhood until it's ridiculous, but such joy, and to see you as a dad. So all of this that you're doing is one thing, but to see you with that little boy, I mean, it just really still, I mean, even I'm almost bringing tears to my eyes thinking about that. So thank you for being such a wonderful dad that we could all see and recognize. Thank you for everything you do work-wise and all of that. Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I guess when you go to the White House and serve there, I will have to send macaroni and cheese to you. Thank you. Mwah.
I'll be brief. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your candor and for the many moments of levity. You love messing with me, and I know it comes from a place of love, so I allow it. And I'm glad I could expose you to sweet potato pie. I wouldn't be a true United States Southerner if I didn't put you on, because that's just how we do it here. So much love.
I'll read a few before someone else chimes in real quickly. Rose says, thank you, Dwayne, for all the work you've done behind the scenes and generosity of your spirit that you bring to our work. Mike says, shine on, brother. You shine in so many ways. You're an idealist with, I don't even know what that word is, Mike. What is that?
Equipose.
Equipose. Tell me what that means, sir.
Everything you were saying, balance, grace, patience.
And how will you survive in academia or local government?
That was a rhetorical question.
Alejandra says, thank you, Dwayne, for all of your hard work behind the scenes. It sounds like you have really kept this group going and together over the last couple of years. Grateful to have connected over the last few months and wishing you the best going forward. Muffin says, thank you, Dwayne, for all you have done for us. In all caps, forever my people. Shanice says, definitely want to express my deep, deep gratitude for Dwayne and your commitment to this task force, and more specifically, my roundtable. We have been encouraged by you, learned from you, uplifted by you, and thoroughly blessed with your knowledge and care. I feel a song coming on. Our roundtable meetings will definitely feel like it's missing a major link. And I believe I interrupted you, Sam.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'll keep it brief as well, like Jesse. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Campbell. Over the past couple of years, I want to say you've kind of served as a loose mentor to me. I feel like I've been able to learn a lot from watching you work and working with you. And I kind of want to echo Shanice's sentiment in saying that, our roundtable is going to miss having you there, because you always came to every discussion we had with unique questions that really shifted our discussions in places that they really needed to go, that not only strengthen our proposals, but also just got us to the places we needed to be. And like Dr. Boone said, I just love seeing you with your son. It's just amazing seeing that. And it's just every time I would see you with him or just talking about him, even the last time we spoke, when you were talking about, the different languages and stuff like that you can speak already. Like, it's just amazing. And I just want to say I'm like deeply grateful for you. And I know you will go do great things as you already have. Thank you.
May I respond, please?
Yes. You
Um,
may have the-
so, thank you. Thank you so very much.
We love you and your
We love-
Pisces energies. You can get emotional. We love that.
Thank you, Jesse. All of you have been a great inspiration to me in many different ways. And I feel as if I'm the one who owes this community, the task force, a lot in return. You've allowed me to know more about me. You've allowed me to learn more about my community. You've allowed me to understand the importance of involvement and learning how to demonstrate how to be a civic-minded citizen for my son is. I won't go away. I asked Rose and Marsha and Xavier to just keep me on the invitation list for these meetings still. And I will still continue to volunteer, however this task force wants to use my service. But I do want you to know I appreciate how you viewed me and how you've received me. But do know, I feel as if I'm the one who is far more indebted to you for your graciousness. For so many of you have had very tough conversations with individually, and you made me leave the conversation as if I've maintained your dignity and my appreciation for your brilliance, your passion, your love for Durham. And that's one of the things I will always remember about the task force. I don't want to say anymore because I will get too emotional, but I appreciate everything and all of you for everything that you've done and will continue to do. I also want to say thank you to the city which has given so much to this task force too. Of the 3 elected bodies, the city has demonstrated far more to, they put more money, I should say, and even human resource, and that's why I got connected to this task force. So thank you, everyone. And for those who don't know Mike, to respond to your rhetorical question that didn't need a response, I will be going to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I will still be here in Durham because my position is remote. I go to DC once per month, and I will be doing some important work that I may not discuss here, but I will be looking after the homeland. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We love you and we'll miss you already. But we'll keep you close.
I was close and didn't even know it.
He could be a spy, don't you think? He's dashing enough. He looks good in the tux. He could be a spy.
Well, if you'll allow me to end my last meeting, everyone, good night. And